We're John and Amy, and we're the hosts of the Totally Worth It podcast. We love to share stories that from the outside look like sad stories. But when you really hear the stories about the families and the joy and the purpose and the impact that they have, you learn that they're not sad stories.
They're happy stories. And while we're listening to those stories, we can learn how to better serve and better love those in the special needs
All
community.
the stories are going to bring joy and value to your day.
Hopefully make you laugh a little bit.
And welcome to the Totally Worth It podcast.
Have fun.
Today on the Totally Worth It podcast, we have Greg Hanna. Greg works for Villanova University and has a program there called Level. And we're so excited to have Greg on today. Greg, thanks for joining us. And can you just start off by telling us what is Level? What do you currently do? Where did it come from? How long has it been around? And where do you hope to see it go?
Absolutely. So first, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Checking in from Villanova University. We're live on campus. So if you hear the church bells, I think they go off every, 15, 30, whatever it might be. So every once in a while, we'll just listen to some good music. But here at NOVA for the past 11 years, I've had the charge of being the assistant director of the Office of Disability Services. So I came in as a private sub. And what that means is I came in as a private subcontractor working with a student that had cerebral palsy. And Frankie, who I had the pleasure of working with in high school at Manasquan High School in Monmouth County, New Jersey. Frankie was looking to elevate from a successful high school experience that we can talk about and then looking at colleges. And his family knew that he had what it takes to go to a great school and get a great education. And Villanova was one of those schools due to some other connections that his family had. So my supervisor and boss, Stephen McWilliams, who's spent the past 30 years doing everything he can to make Villanova accessible and academically successful for students of all abilities, saw Frank as an opportunity to continue to further his mission, and then had asked me if I would consider coming with Frankie. And then I had to ask Steve if it would be okay for me to do that and become a part of his team, however needed. And that first came as a private subcontractor, almost like an aide, as we often see in schools, to support Frank academically as people were starting to understand what life would be like with a nonverbal student in a motorized wheelchair with full-time personal care attendants taking care of his every need. So Steve gave me the opportunity to come in and to work with Frank specifically. But also I had spoken to Steve about the idea of branching out and building more of a social atmosphere around Frank, because for any student that's coming to Villanova with a disability, they all have met their minimum requirements to attend Villanova. And those requirements, if you look them up, are very high SAT scores, very high ACT scores. Tuition is very expensive. And it's something that it's a private Northeast Augustinian school with a great mission and great values, but that all comes with certain things and certain levels of expectations. So I knew that Frank would be okay in the classroom, 100%, as did Villanova, but it was, would he connect with our campus and how he would connect with our campus and what would it take for him to connect with our campus. And I think, that's kind of where I came into play. But, luckily Frank is a very outgoing, incredible individual that, while nonverbal, talks more than almost anyone I know. Through a language board and through a computer device, he just doesn't quit. He already texted me today, so it's one of those things where here's a guy where his whole life, people always wondered what was going to come out when it came out, but it just keeps going. So all those things put together, with Frank being at Nova and with another guy, Nikki Gaynor, being a student with CP, we had these two great students who also wanted to advocate and be a part of the social fabric of a college institution. And I was just fueled by the opportunity to guide them in hopes that maybe some other students would come into our lives that would then want to continue to build out. And that's where Level kind of got started. So the short story of that is I was a counselor at like a youth leadership kind of academy for students at NOVA. It was like a one-day, all-day kind of event where students could come and get some leadership development and training. And I was just one of the counselors for the event, supporting our students. And I met a student there who was really engaged in ableism awareness and really wanted to get more involved. She had broken her foot playing intramural soccer and was on crutches. and then had to crutch around Villanova's campus. And we're a pretty flat campus. We're not very big. So it's definitely manageable, but it was different. For the first time, a able-bodied student became temporarily disabled and had to figure out what it was like to get out of her bed in her dorm room and go into the communal bathroom and then be able to go to class. But she was also a very intelligent and strong individual that made it look easy, probably to the point where people, and she even told her, where people were almost like congratulating her, saying, wow, you're doing so great. And wow, this is incredible. You're able to still do these things. And she was supposed to run a 5K and she walked it on crutches and everyone thought this was like this big thing. And she was like, I'm getting all this praise, but yet there are students here that are living with disabilities on a daily that aren't getting the same, even just attention, not necessarily praise of like, hey, you're great. It was like, hey, let's go have lunch, or hey, let's go to this event. So Ari and I met, and like any college student that came into an office and say, hey, I have an idea for a club, I'd like to start it. What does that entail? And it's like, well, I was like, send me some ideas for what you have and what you would like to see this group do, and then we can start to build from there. And then about an hour later, I had a 57-slide PowerPoint of what Level was going to be, without the name at that point yet, but what this group was going to be. And then I knew I had to hold on to her because she was a go-getter. And Ari became the student founder of this club called Level. And basically, for all the fans and people listening, when they're like, oh, these names, everything that you do, right? Like the Able movement and Running with Mabry and all these things, right? All these names, they're so cool. And it's like, how'd you think of it? I literally said, hey, Google, words with the letter V in the middle because of Villanova.
I like it.
I get a list of words. I start looking through all of them. And I see Level, and I'm like, level the playing field, balancing scales. And then I said to Ari, I was like, what do you think? And she was like, this sounds pretty cool. So that's literally how Level, the name, was founded in that sense. So,
That's awesome. Well, first of all, these names, Ari and Frankie, like I feel like I'm set in Philly right now. Hey, yo, Frankie.
Well, the funny part there, right? So Frankie, his name is Francis Albert Kennedy. Francis Albert, right? Like Frank Sinatra. Right? Yeah. And Ariana is Ariana Meltzer Brune. So she's not like, in the back eating the pasta, if that's what you're asking. I know where you're going. Right? I mean, I'm sure she likes a good pasta dinner, but, she's not in the back with Uncle Tony. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's funny.
So Ari and Frankie and Nikki and a bunch of our students became this, like, just an opportunity to tell a story. By just exposure. So Level started in 2011. This is our 10 year, which has been a huge thing. And Level is a student group that allows any student of any ability to come into our lives and engage in a accessible college experience. And there's so many other things that have happened over that time. Just before Level had started, Frank and Nick were part of a documentary that our students in a social justice documentary film class in our communications department, they made a film about these two boys because they were both managers of our basketball teams as well. And Villanova was a high profile basketball school. So here's like this message of like the inspirational managers in a sense, but then we also actually put the hard line of like a real life living with someone with a disability and what it was like for families. The same way that you tell your story about Mabry and what it's like having Mabes and then your two boys. Like there was also those through lines in the movie where you looked at Frank and his mother and father and looked at Nick and his mother and father and what it was like when it was prom time and what it was like when it was time to take him to school and what it was like to get him out of bed. But then there's this Villanova basketball family that took them in and took them in for who they were. And then we built off of that where not only do they need to be known like in the basketball community, but there's also all these peers that can get to know them, right? So let's engage with the 18 and 22-year-olds who are actually like their classmates. Yeah. And that's kind of like, so there was some doors opening the whole while that just allowed this thing to continue. And having Steve McWilliams and his support through that, because here we are building this kind of new group at Villanova, which was coming with a lot of like exposure and a lot of change. You want to make sure that you're supported too, right? So having, Steve's blessing and Matt, who works in our office too, Lorenzic, who was a student that made that documentary, who now works in our office with our students. It's been a great group of people But the reason why Level now we feel has been successful is just because of the nature of our college students at Villanova who believe in mission and in our Augustinian values. But we had students with disabilities that didn't need to have their story told, but wanted to be a part of the fabric. And then our office would try to take care of the accessibility piece to allow for the safety and security to not be an issue so that they can then go enjoy. And that has trickled from a student with CP to a student who's a type 1 diabetic to a student who has Crohn's to a student who has, all sorts of things. So Level is a deeply rooted Villanova student group that, provides academic support for people, tutoring, scribing, typing, writing, test taking, all of those things to academically help our students. And the crazy part is it's not really like tutoring too, because someone was like, oh, there's someone with a disability, they must need help in their math class. No, most of the time, students are coming in going like, holy crap, these kids are just as bright as I am. I better get my in gear. But then that's where that levels out too, like smart name there, because that's where they go, okay, I thought I was coming in like this, and now I'm kind of getting to be like this. And then I learned they like the same movies and the same music and the same things. And then they become friends. And then they go like, holy crap, this is a really awesome thing because a school provides this opportunity where we were just hoping to have some students get support. And next thing you know, it's led to some real moments and memories for students that I'm super thankful for. And thankful for our university, especially, like I said, from Steve down to support, because without those guys supporting some of our, at the time, crazy ideas, who knows where we would be right now.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Level's just totally changing the social narrative and how, those with disabilities are looked at from afar. And maybe it's ignorance because you weren't raised around somebody, but even 10 years ago, the story has changed, the narrative has changed. So Greg, from what you were saying, it sounds like the majority of the students that you're working with have physical disabilities, correct? Or is there some with mental disabilities?
Sure, great question. So our university has two offices. So my office primarily focuses in the physical disability space. So anyone that works with the Office of Disability Services with Steve, myself, and Matt are coming to us with a physical disability kind of being the primary, right? So someone can, say like, hey, ADHD or depression, or it might be, but also I'm managing Crohn's, or I'm managing, like I said, a type 1 diabetic, or also cancer and recovery from, thyroid cancer and surgery, where it might be. And then there's a whole other office that kind of that works through our academic affairs and more of our provost and the academic side, which is our Learning Support Services Office, LSS. And my great colleagues over there are taking care of a lot of the cognitive, behavioral, mental health type pieces that aren't so much focused on the physical. So if someone walked into Nicole's office and said, this is what's on my documentation, if it leans more towards our office, she'll say, you need to go and see Greg. Or if someone comes in our office and says, hey, this is what I have going on, then I can send them over to our LSS office. And, the nice part is over the years, our office has just become closer because more students are kind of coming to us with different disclosures and different needs. But also like I always say, we walk the same path, but we wear different shoes, right? So we're both doing the same things, but just certain things are different here, certain things are different there. But primarily for me, the focus is the physical, but the cool part is Level is everywhere, right? So the nice part is LSS can have, some of the students that are wanting to be engaged and wanting to be out there, then they can say, hey, here's this student group, go check this out. And then they come into Level. So there's a lot of students that are like some of the all-stars of the LSS office are members of Level. And I don't necessarily work with their full academic skill program and make sure that I give them their accommodations, but they work socially through our student group to enhance their network, which is a great partnership.
That's awesome. You said you worked with Frankie when he was in high school. Where did your heart for those with disabilities come from?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've told this story so many times in so many different ways, and as you get older, not that the story changes because you forget things as you're getting older, but the story changes because you start to see how more things lined up, right?
Yeah.
You become a parent, and I have a 7, 6, and soon to be 4. So my story, not that the stories change, but the way I feel about the stories change, because I even have my own kids now. When I met Frankie when I was in my 20s, I didn't know what it was like being a parent, let alone a parent of a disabled child. And then thinking about what the family was thinking versus my own thoughts, as a 20-year-old, I didn't know anything, right? So it's just been a unique journey of like, Greg, how did you get here? In a sense, Frankie found me, and the world found me. I didn't go looking for it. Not that I didn't want to, but my goals, if someone met me in high school or college and say, what do you want to do? I wanted to play sports. I had the fortune of being an okay athlete. I wasn't a Division I, future LeBron James, but I could play, and I had a lot of heart, and I wanted to play hard. So, I had some nice success athletically, and that was my first kind of like thought, like, hey, I'll go to a smaller school, and I thought about being an attorney. So I was like, I can go to a school, get a history degree, go to law school, and then maybe play sports. Even if it was D2, D3, I didn't care. I just wanted to play something next level. That's just what I wanted to do. But that quickly changed through high school, and then I went to junior college first, and I had the opportunity to get a 2-year degree in New Jersey. Due to an injury where another story, another day, I broke a foot. Some of my plans for college changed, so I went JUCO first to kind of get right. Transferred to Monmouth University in West Long Branch, another nice private school in Jersey, about a mile from the beach. So, if it was sunny out, you had to make the decision. Do I go to class or do I go to the ocean? It was tough, but I went to Monmouth University in West Long Branch and changed the focus of law school to becoming a teacher, with the idea of maybe becoming like an administrator, because good, bad, or indifferent, I like the type A kind of personality that I had. So I thought about, did I want to be a 30-year history teacher, or did I want to maybe run a school, or be an athletic director, or be a counselor, right? So, but I got into teaching, and then, the world and the Lord and whoever had some different plans for me. Somewhere it was written somewhere that Greg was going to go do something different. And so basically what happened was I was looking for a job in education. And I had gotten a call from a good friend of mine. I had played basketball with his son. They went to my church, Lutheran church, growing up my whole life. And they said, hey, there's a student coming in as an incoming freshman, and he has CP, and he's looking to change his aide from elementary school to high school, because he wanted to try to find someone younger, because his aide was a little bit older, maybe someone a little bit more into sports, some things that more lined up with who Frankie was. And I had never met him before. So I thought, this is where the story's crazy. So I was like, yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity to get into a school and get going. And the principal said, just work with Frank for a year, and then I'll write you a recommendation letter to go teach wherever you want. And I said, okay, that sounds great. And it was the best job at the time, and it was something I really wanted to care about and get into. So I was like, let's do it. So I started to learn more about who the student is, and then I hear his name for the first time, and they say his name's Frankie Knievi. And then I just kind of I pull back, because when I was at Monmouth University, I also part-time as a waiter at a restaurant, because I grew up in a shore town. I live 6 blocks from the beach. So there's a whole slew of shore towns that just line the Jersey Shore. So I lived in one, and then I worked at this bar, and the bar restaurant was called Frankie's. And I had met the owner before, and the owner's name was Frank Knievi. Now, the owner didn't come to the bar all the time because he had 2 properties. He was managing 2 restaurants. But one time he came for dinner when I was working there, when I was in college, and he brought his family. And I actually saw Frankie for the first time when he was probably in 6th or 7th grade, having no clue that I would line up with Frank somewhere down the road. So when I heard the name, I was just like, holy crap. Not only do I know the family a little bit, I worked for the dad as a part-time job while going to school to work in education. And then one of my first real goes is going to be working with this guy's son. Just like a unique kind of who's out there watching over me. And so Frank and I got together. He was a freshman, and let me see, how old was I? I was in my mid-20s. There's a picture of me and Frankie at our first high school Saturday football game, when he's a freshman, and I'm just starting the job. And then, Frankie's been at my wedding. I mean, Frankie's been around my life. He's never left. But the world just kind of found me, and after working with him the first year, I really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed being a part of his life. He taught me so much about how to be an educator, and how to listen, and also how to advocate, and also to help him advocate, because the goal was for him to go be great without me. The goal wasn't to have me next to his hip forever. And he knew that just as well as I did. But also I wanted to be a part of his life forever. And his family took such good care of me to support me. And I just did my best to be my best for Frank. And then also Frank just surrounded himself with great people. And then if it wasn't for Steve here at Nova, who knows what would have happened, right? I mean, when you think about people being put in your life at the right time, meeting Frankie at that time, it was meant to be for me. Meeting Steve at the time that I met Steve with Frank, when he came to talk about coming to Villanova, Steve was the right guy at the right time. And, now here I am. This is year 11. I mean, Frankie's been out of here for a while, but every day I'm thankful for Frank and for Nick and for Steve and for people. But working with Frank through high school was eye-opening to allow me to really make a good shift here, to see how some things we did in the high school with his own doing. I didn't control him. He steered the ship, and I had to drive it sometimes, so that's just how that worked.
That's awesome. Where's Frankie now?
So he lives in Seagirt, New Jersey, nice short town in Monmouth County. He's gone through a couple of different career paths. He's been a journalist for a great company, Diversity Inc. So he used to do a lot of writing, a lot of publishing. He does some coaching. He's been an assistant on a football team, on a baseball team, some basketball. So Frankie's really big into sports. He's also working on his own screenplay with Steve, my supervisor, who's also has his PhD in the fine arts, and those guys are working on a really cool screenplay, trying to get it produced, which is awesome. And then he also works on an internship program where he tries to get internships in some sports camps and sports industries in the local areas for people with disabilities, to give them an opportunity to get into the door in sports, and not just in the manager way, being a statistician or being involved in some scouting. It's something that we work with here to try to help too. So Frank can't sit still. He's always doing something. And I actually texted him this morning because Frankie's like 80s rock music. So on my car ride in this morning, there was an awful song, which some people might love, Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo, I think it was called, which is a big of the movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, which I showed to Frankie while he was in high school, and he absolutely loved Back to School. So when it came on this morning, I literally took a picture of it and sent it to him. That's how, that's just how we are, man. He's couldn't do it without him, but Frank's doing great, and but still trying to break through certain barriers in the career space, right? I mean, it's not to say that everything's great. Frankie would love to be doing certain jobs, but there are some barriers. But also he's met those and then tried to find ways around them. And thanks to great family support and great people around him, there's no doubt that he will continue to just do great things. And however I can support him, I will. Because like I said, for the most part, it's just how can I see what's going on, and can I add any value to it, or if not, how can I just promote what he's doing to help him, move his agenda forward.
Greg, when you see a student that you think would really benefit from the Level program, and they're a freshman, they're brand new, probably the first time they've been away from home for an extended period of time, or at least lived somewhere outside of the home, what are the most common challenges and fears that you see in that student? And then what's your common strategy for how the Level team can come intervene and make it a welcome campus for them?
Sure. The interesting part now is that not that we're like this well-oiled machine, but we're established, right? So there's a plan that can be put in place if someone walks in the office today and says, I'm thinking about coming to Villanova. For example, if we have 2 students here now who resemble Frank in the CP, nonverbal, and you can go through everything that we've done, whether they choose to do it or not. We have everything in place to show why they can be successful, because we've had Frankie and Nikki and Brian Hayward and John. I mean, we've had people before these guys, right? Versus 10 years ago, when I first got here, there was stories, and Steve worked with them so well, but a lot of them were more problem solving and making sure the accessibility piece was there. So now it's like we have like this program we can roll out and say, this is what we are, this is what we do. So when we meet students now, so like, this is a much different situation from a COVID perspective. So hopefully, a little bit of both. So pre-COVID, someone comes in and says, I'm thinking about going to Villanova. I have a disability. This is what it is. Obviously, as you guys know, it depends on what it is, because you could have 10 people that say they have CP and none of them are the same.
Right.
No two disabilities are the same, right? So we have to make sure that we show the academic support first to show how we believe they would be successful in the classroom and what those accommodations would be. The extra time on tests, the private testing space, the ability to copy notes, any kind of auxiliary aids. I mean, we go through all those things to try to like bring the anxiety down a little bit, right? And then they go, I'm thinking about living on campus. I want to live here. What's that look like? I need a private bathroom. I need, my own space for my medical equipment. I need an extra refrigerator to keep my stuff. Then we connect with our housing team, and our housing team at Nova, for example, we've built such a great relationship with Marie Schouder and her team, and Tom and all these guys come together to work with our office to say, okay, this is what we have. How can we make it work, and try to provide options for a student and family to try to pick the best housing situation for a student to be successful across the board. And then someone might need help with transportation. And then we have to work with public safety to say, hey, I might need, besides our shuttles that we have run, we have a couple additional mobility shuttles that are more specific to make sure that a student feels that if they can't get from point A to point B as quickly as they need to, that we have the ability to get them around campus. If someone has a dining concern, if they have a dietary restriction or a major allergy, how to work with our dining services staff to find the best meal plan available, or to potentially waive out of it so that they can prepare their own food. And then that comes with like the car on campus or the kitchen in their room. It's such a process where as each student comes in, we try to see what fits, right? And then try to network and plug. And then when they come back to us and they're like, okay, I figured out like how to be at Villanova, like I can go to class, I can live there, and I can get around. I can go to class. But there's a whole bunch of other great stuff that happens on a college campus. How do I do that? And that's when they start to come into what level is. And most students, if I had a lineup and said, just come in front of the screen and tell, these great people how you got involved with level, they're gonna be like, John, Amy, this guy Greg is nuts. He wouldn't leave me alone. Told me I had to show up. For a long time, I literally would you're coming, right? Like you're coming, because I knew in my mind that like it could work out, right? But then, now we have so many great students who have been through the program where I can say, someone like right now we have a couple of students that are in, remission or recovery from cancer, certain treatments, certain plans, whatever it might be. And then I can go, okay, well, here's a couple other students, and I start to just kind of email them together and say, hey, I want to introduce you to so-and-so. I think you guys might be able to connect on certain things, and then I get out of the way. I try to plug our students with other students up front, so also develop a peer network. And Level really is a great network, because when freshman students are coming, to get back to the full scope of what your question was, a lot of the fears about being away from home, a lot of the anxiety about, kind of managing your own schedule, the idea of, when you're going to eat and study and where you're going to study, like some of those like just natural things that any student has. Students in our office see that they have the same ones. The things that are different from students in our office and, just the typical college student might just be some of the medical needs, the medications, like I said, the treatments, physical therapy, so that might be. But like their actual preconceived nerves or anxieties or, whatever it might be, it lines up with mostly every other college student. And then they have Level as an instant network of students in different grades from all of our different colleges. So if someone says, I'm a liberal arts student, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a nursing student, there's people in Level that have kind of been through all these things where I can just try to plug and give them an immediate support system. And more students would probably like to have that than not. So we're happy to be able to provide a support system where we're peer driven. Like, yes, like our office and just me being the advisor to the group for so long, like there's no doubt that I try to, really get students involved. But now with the success and with the great students we've had, it's nice to let our students do the work. And then also in return, that freshman student, and I had the same conversation today, like literally like right across from where I'm standing. I was sitting with an incoming freshman from Arizona. type 1 diabetic, and expressing concerns and talking about all these different things. And we talked about what could, happen, what's going to go on. But I said, hey, the coolest part of what we're talking about right now is that by the time you graduate, you're going to have a chance to talk to somebody else in the same situation as an incoming freshman. And you have a really good story and you can tell it to help that student get through, versus me saying, I once knew a guy, but because there's so much of our student stories we don't know, because we leave at 5 o'clock and the campus is open for a long time. So there's so many things that, that I try to let our students do the talking for, in hopes that also develops their leadership structure, their public speaking. It's full service. It's for them to be better people when they leave here. And this is just a great place to do it at.
Do you guys interact much with the families of your students? When they first, I'm sure they come in for the first interview or meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the biggest fears? I can't imagine. I mean, now if you need Mabry to come to Villanova, I'm ready. We can make that happen. But what do you see that some of the biggest fears are?
The first question is going to be like, if you're going to ask to move in with her, right? Because parents will be like, well, can I move in and can I live here on campus? Because some people want to come back. Some people want to come back.
Yeah.
And that's a hard.
I don't want to move in, so Mabry's on her own.
I think that, some of the fears obviously today are different than before, right? Because of what's going on. Okay. So there's definitely more fears for some students, just given health, safety, and security of where we are. But also it goes back to the same kind of safety and security of making sure our office is taking care of someone's son or daughter, right? So, being from Texas, I know I've been there a few times, so I just think about big schools, big roads, big bridges, big everything in Texas, right?
Yeah.
And some people might love the climate and weather in Texas versus Philly. So for me, I often say, if I could pick up Villanova and put it in San Diego or South Florida, certain places I I would love it. I don't love the winter here, but it's okay. I deal with it like everybody else does. But there's a certain feel that I personally like. So when someone comes to Nova and it's a parent and they're talking about their questions, their concerns, their fears, whatever it might be, I tell them that they can go find other schools around the country that might have a prettier campus, which is hard because Nova's very pretty. Might be in a nicer location. It might have more bells and whistles, but ultimately you have to feel comfortable with the people you're going to be leaving your son or daughter with.
Yeah.
And I believe in Steve and Matt and our team. I believe in Nicole and the LSS team. I believe in Marie and our housing team. We believe in our staff. That I think that's what we have to show when we talk to parents, so that they see that the staff is what matters, and it's not the concrete, the pavers, and the beautiful trees and everything else. And I think sometimes that's where and again, every situation is different, right? Because some parents and some people that might see this, their sons or daughters might not be able to get to a school like Villanova. So they see what they might think is the prettiest looking place or the biggest looking place, because that elevates the confidence level in someone to say, my son or daughter goes here. So that someone goes, wow, they're there, right? And Villanova is one of those places too. I've had students that have come here knowing full out that they've come here to prove a point, because people thought they couldn't get into Villanova. Not only are they coming here, they're kick. But that being said, it's really about who is going to be doing those things. And I think that for our office, we just believe in the mission of our school. We believe in who we are as, Villanovans, and we have to do that to allow families to interact with us and feel comfortable as we do those things. So we talk to families often. Of course, legally, there's things whether we do or don't, right? Because they're older than 18 and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
In our office, we're a smaller school, and we can have relationships with our families. But I often say, I don't want mom and dad calling, not because I don't want to talk to them. I don't want them calling because I want to make sure you're taking care of business, and then you're telling mom and dad what's going on. But when a mom and dad calls me, again, I was in the high school setting before I was in the college setting. My wife is a 16-year school teacher, so we've had plenty of families, and not all great, right? We've all been there. There's a lot of advocacy that goes in the IEP meetings. There's a lot of talk that comes out, like, we've been there.
Yeah.
But like, ultimately, I just try to make the family feel that at least if it's going to work, I explain how it can work. And if it's not working, we also have to explain why it's not working and be okay with that. We've had those conversations before. We will continue to. And again, I think it's always based on where you are. I could be working somewhere else and this conversation would be completely different. So I think the hard part is when anyone listens to this, they're just going to automatically think that like that Villanova is this beautiful dream scenario for a college-bound student with a disability. And it is for very many reasons, but it also hasn't been like that. And not that it hasn't been because Villanova wasn't doing it. It's just an evolution, like you said. We just have to slowly, and we keep climbing. But the first climb was the legal climb, right? After the ADA gets signed, it's a legal climb. How do you make a place accessible? And then it starts to keep going up. So, and then, you know, families now are more involved, which is okay. I think I was raised, you know, differently where like if a teacher called home and said Gregory acted up in class, I better hide for a while before I come home. And I think that's seen differently now sometimes when someone says Gregory did something wrong. Sometimes the question is the other way. Well, what happened, right? So the next part here going over is we don't deal with those types of interactions with our families. Our conversations with families are how can we get your son or daughter safely through Villanova with confidence, with networks, and the opportunity to go be great after Villanova. But we've had plenty of conversations with families, and it's like I said, it's changed me because the pre-conversations, you know, think about it. I mean, we're having this conversation now. I've been here for 11 years, but imagine if you guys walked in 10 years ago with Mabry, you're meeting me as a mid 20-year-old who just got here. You'd be like, this is the guy I'm supposed to talk to, you know? So we've all been through it. I think people still say that now probably, and I'm okay with it. So, I mean, you know, but it's one of those things where it's an evolution, and our conversations with families have evolved. And then I also enjoy talking with families just so they have an understanding of not just same thing, everything that everyone hears from me today. You know, like I'll look right to the camera, right? So like, if you take it all and then you try to go apply it to a different place, like you can take everything I'm saying and then go ask a school in Texas, in Delaware, in Connecticut, in Iowa, wherever, because the stuff we're saying should be universal. So even if they get done with me and they're like, this ain't the place, then at least they can go ask other places. Do you do these things, right? So that's where, you know, I enjoy the family talk in hopes that even if they don't choose Villanova, that maybe it helps them no matter where their plan goes.
Well, and also
Greg,
hopefully, oh, sorry, John.
You finish and then I've got a question.
Well, I was going to say that hopefully this program is really just building a model that can be easily duplicated where it's needed, which is everywhere, you know, so thank you.
And that leads to my question, which I think would be at the top of any parent who's listening to this right now. What's at the top of their mind, I think I'm going to ask it on their behalf, is we hear of this great program called Level at Villanova, and we know that other universities have, or probably all universities have to have an office like yours by law, I would imagine. Do you know of any other universities that have taken that office and built a program like Level that is even doing anything that you've ever heard of remotely the same or on that type of level?
I see what you did there.
That word just works, man.
It just works.
Words with the letter V in the middle. So,
people listening right now are saying, dang, Villanova's far, or dang, Villanova's hard to get into, or whatever it might be.
So
what do you think?
I'd say is I would tell families to start getting online, and there's through like AHEAD, right, the National Association for Disability in Higher Education. So I would look at AHEAD because from AHEAD you can look at what they call, I wrote it down, they're called dream chapters. So it's like disability rights, education, activism, and mentoring. So AHEAD is this national organization for disability in higher ed. And then they have this like college sect where Dream tries to set up chapters at universities, right? And then like, so they call Villanova and say, hey, like, do you guys have something? And we talk about Level, and they go, okay, well, we don't need to put Dream in at your school, but you could be like an affiliate of the things we do. And there's a lot of things online about clubs or organizations that colleges have that are disability focused, right? So you can look up all these different colleges, and it might be something focused primarily on autism, or something completely focused on, diabetes, or something completely focused on sleep disorders, or something completely focused on blind or deaf or mobility, spinal cord injuries. There's all these different opportunities to see through the dream kind of affiliate. So someone just put in like dream chapters through a head, you will stumble upon these links that can get you just a list to look at. Now, any conversation I've ever had with somebody professionally, not that Level is the only game in town, 'cause that's not true. But I know that Level is doing certain things that maybe other schools aren't doing because of resources, funding, but it all comes back to the students. I know, and again, like talking to you guys, and again, most of your people you've spoken to before, whether it's other parents or other people, it's not that it's like preaching to the choir, but you and I both know that if I put Level in a box, and I said this to John when we were talking before, if I put it in a box and I send it to your house today and I say, you go do all of these things and it's going to work. The only way it's going to work is if someone like Mabry and other people that are involved in certain situations from a special needs standpoint, or a student with a different ability, is willing to put themselves out there to at least engage. Because the invisible disabilities, some students don't feel that they need anything except for if something went wrong. So if all I have is a dietary restriction, I have a certain allergy or certain restriction, and the only time I would need something is if I had an allergic reaction to something. And the world would never know unless I had that allergic reaction. Do I really want to be super engaged and super involved in what we're doing? Because maybe it puts them out there. When we send out our letters sometimes, people are like, are you sending letters to faculty? Because I really don't need anything. I just need to be protected in the event that something happens. So while Level has been a blessing to many people, including myself, do I think that it could be put in a box and shipped all over the country and it would work? Yeah, I do. But do I think it would take the right schools and the right people? Because again, the Ari, Frankie, Nikki, I could list a whole run of who we started with. And the reason why it worked is because all those kids were just excited to do something and wanted to be a part of this. I know people at these other schools, some schools just operate differently. It also depends on the philosophy of a disability services office at a university. Is every disability office in the country set up to be involved in the social movement and inclusion? Or are they really working in, the law and making sure that legally everything is put into place? Because that has a much different thing. If you walk into the office and all we do is someone comes in to complain because a elevator's not working, or they can't get to class, or their accommodations aren't being met, like if we become a customer service window, and then, hey, you want to join this group? No, I'm complaining about all the crap that's happening at school. Why am I going to want to go with you, right? So that's where there's so much challenge. So I think it was just the perfect storm that has been a great fortune to a lot of people. And I think like this is an opportunity to share it. And then, there's been kids that have come to Nova to meet with us, didn't ultimately go here, and then tried to start clubs at other schools similar. The cool part is that's like a cool thing, right? So someone, I didn't get into Nova, but I'm going here now and I'm trying to start a group. And there was one girl that came here to visit. She would have been great here, but just things didn't work out. And then she went to a school close. And I said, if you ever do something, you let me know. And then an email came in, hey, would you come and speak to my group? And I was like, cool, what is it? And it was a group very similar to Level, try to have a similar focus. She worked through the College of Education to have future teachers. And then they showed a movie and I came and spoke, and it was just like really cool. And then, there's another girl who came here, wanted to come here, and then went to Notre Dame, and I know the office is there too. And they try to do some things there as well, and just little break-offs. And there's even a graduate group at Penn that's trying to get going. So colleges have places, to what John said. Every college in the country has an office like ours, like you said, legally. And then there are students that want to engage, but also just depends on what the focus is. So ours is just kind of like a broad brush stroke. We want to try to do everything. We want to support our students, and then I also want to plan a retreat. I want to support our students. I want to go have a banquet. I want to support our students. we're going to host a casino night fundraiser and try to raise some funding to do things we want to do. We're going to go get t-shirts. We're going to go get hats. We're going to go get cell phone cases. We're going to get quarter zips. Like, right, we're going to go do all these things. But again, in the initial sense, it was like, can we just get some people to spend some time with us so we can try to share our students' message? So do I think Level could be anywhere? Of course I do, because what we're doing is it's all like in here. It's not like, you know, when people talk about what it is, like, how do you teach a blind student? I don't like go into my library and go, see this book right here?
Yeah.
Manual for teaching a student that's blind. Like, yes, you can look stuff up, but like, do you have what's in here to be open up here to try to deliver? And that's what we just hope for with all of our faculty and staff, and then even our own student-to-student interactions.
Awesome.
Yeah, Greg, ever since you and I connected for the first time and I heard about Level and I heard this story, it was something that I didn't even know existed, and it had never crossed my mind that it should exist or could exist. It never crossed my mind. But since then, which has been a few months, I have found myself dreaming, like daydreaming about university campuses having an organization like Level on their campus and how many people could benefit from it. And I think that there's people right now listening or watching that are hearing about this also for the first time, and they're also going to be daydreaming about, oh my gosh, we have to spread the word that this is a possibility. And not that we can duplicate Greg and what he does or clone him, but there's things out there that are possible. And I see light bulbs going off, and I see so much hope coming from just hearing the story and about Level, really.
Absolutely. And that's the plan. I mean, you know, so for example, like, and again, like at Villanova here, we run the largest student ran Special Olympics Fall Festival globally, I think. There are thousands of athletes here for a weekend. And this year, I think it's going to be virtual, right? But I think this is like the 26th or 27th. I forget. We're over 25. I know that. So it's like, we do this huge thing on campus, and our students are super engaged. There's so many ways to be involved with the whole Special Olympics, Fall Festival, athlete practice, all these things. And then Level will be there to like make waffles for breakfast for one of the days. And a family could walk by and be like, oh, what's Level? And then we describe it, right? Now, again, like I said prior, that might not be the end game for someone's son or daughter that's at that fall festival. But I'm happy that they can see that there is some continuation of people being involved in disability advocacy and awareness. So that, like I said, they might go home and be like, man, I wish my son or daughter could have experienced this. But there's also been that rise in inclusion education on college campuses for people with different cognitive abilities, where they can come to a college campus, get a college experience, take some classes, potentially certificate programs. I mean, there is some movement in the inclusion education piece that even our school was involved in through a great program called Be United. So it's things that we try to do, but you know, in the initial sense, I was asking students that were involved in Special Olympics. Now this is again 10 years ago. All of you are lining up to be a part of this weekend. And then when the trucks and the buses and the athletes all go away, we have over X amount of students that are here right now who are your college peers.
Yeah.
That you're getting to know. And they're going to walk the stage with you at graduation. They're going to be in your class. Like, if you're really all in, like, let's see what else you got. So I was trying to test a little bit in the initial sense, which, again, I'm sure some days worked and some days didn't, right? But it's one of those things where, you know, there's been all sorts of things that our students will see here at Villanova, and they can determine. I mean, we have, you know, like the 24-hour dance marathon for pediatric cancer, where they're raising tons of money. We have the Fall Fest. We have Level. We have Be United. We have Best Buddies and Relay. I mean, there's so many. But Level was one that, and again, I think the other part of it too was, and you guys are experiencing this, or you know families that experience it. If a student's coming to Villanova with a strong, severe physical, observable disability, in the school setting, public school, they're with the aide, the one-to-one, and most likely I'd aid, even now if I go back, I just turned 40, right? So if I go back to being an aide in someone's school, elementary school or high school, I'm going to be seen as the old man that hangs out with whomever. When a student comes to college, they don't want to hang out with Greg, going to class, walking around, and being the right-hand man. So we were first trying to do it so that Frank and Nick could be away from the adult supervision and be in the peer supervision, and the idea of not paying from like a work study standpoint, right? Because our office had work studies where we would pay students to do the tutoring, scribing, and writing, and we shifted to a volunteer standpoint where students would come in with their time, where again, in the first, people were probably thinking, oh, this is like almost like an active service. Let me sign up so I can go help Frank. And then they come away going, I can't wait to see Frank again because we're going to hang out or we're going to get, so that's, and like, I think we're over 70,000 hours of direct peer-to-peer support for students with disabilities, completely volunteered by our own students. I mean, so even like strategically, it's a great move for the school too, right? Because we're not paying. And also it's become fundable. People want to support us because they see the great work our students are doing. So we've tried to find a way to not exploit anybody, walk that line of exposure and exploitation. John and I talked about that too, right? Because I'm sure there's people that see, and we even said it like straight up, people see John and Mabry and they're wondering like, is there an agenda to put this girl out here with John running, doing all these things? Like, trust me, I don't have a Mabry, but I know what that sounds like, right? So we had to do the same thing where we wanted to just be a piece of exposure. And I know that's what John does. The exposure makes someone's head go, what's going on here? And then maybe that asks a question, and that question allows John to talk, and then John hooks him in, and then you both get him, and then it's game over. And that's kind of, that's what we try to do here too.
I close the deal. I'm the deal closer.
I could see that.
Definitely.
I could see that. That's why you have the fancy background. He's just behind the yellow wall back. I'm out back there. I know that.
That's right.
That's in the closet.
But that's, it's just that's the thing, you know. So I think it's, you know, I just wanted to 11 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, you know, I just wanted an opportunity to allow our students to at least show some exposure and see what sticks. And, you know, again, Steve supporting it, Matt coming on board, other people that have been involved with Steve prior to me showing up and supporting us. It allowed some of those things to happen without too much permission. We just kind of went after it, and we've been really happy with the results.
It's awesome.
Wow.
So good.
Amy, why don't you go to question number 6? Because I feel like we already got question number 5 answered with Frankie's story.
Yeah.
So why don't you go to question number 6 and then finish it with your normal ending question? We can wrap
it. Okay, so you know, you mentioned earlier that you guys do sometimes speak with families and stuff like that. I can imagine, you know, mother hens out there can sometimes hold their kids back, you know, just for, you know, you've raised this child for this many years and you're like putting them out in the world, and that's scary, I'm sure, to a lot of families. What would be your best piece of advice for families who are kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about this?
That's a great question, because it's, you know, it is a process, right? So I don't expect someone to drop off their son or daughter. Now, again, there are people that are going to be like, car still moving, door open.
Does it have a Texas license plate? It's not.
We know that, right? And I've had students like that. I mean, trust me, I've had students where I've been like, holy cow, this is straight up like tuck and roll and get it moving, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, with the families, like I said, I mean, my biggest thing is I just try to do my best to talk about how our office will do our best to instill some confidence in that first semester, so that a student knows that they belong, and then try to chart success, whatever it might be, right? So they can be there the whole time, because there's definitely helicopters that are flying over this place right now. There's no doubt. There's choppers out here. There's no doubt. But as long as they know that we have the best interest of their son and daughter, and we're hovering in a space that maybe they don't know too much about because they have been rooted in being a parent for 18 years and have been grinding through caseworkers and child study teams and guidance counselors and all these things, that by the time they get here, they don't even know what goes on in higher ed. So we get to kind of say, hey, this is what this looks like. And as long as we can convey that we have a plan in place, we can keep them safe, and they can get their degree, because when they're coming here, they're coming to graduate, right? There's like that evolution we talked before. Like, just the idea in the 90s of someone going to college and taking a college class was like the first check, and then it became, you know, taking a year, and then taking 2 years, getting the associates, going to a 4-year institution. Like we're so past all that now. They want a job. They're not coming to talk to me and say, hey, is my son or daughter going to pass calculus? They're going to say, hey, are you getting my son or daughter a job when they graduate?
Yeah.
And the disability employment rate for a college graduate from a 4-year institution, it's like 50%. So it's a flip of a coin. And there's some students here that have the resume and the academics to work anywhere, like anywhere. But yet there's still that gap that our office takes a charge on trying to help to at least allow the needle to move here. But we just tell parents to do whatever it is they think they need to do best to support their son or daughter, and that we'll do whatever we can to do what's best to try to shape their son or daughter to become as independent and confident as they can be, and at least provide an opportunity for networks to be present, and then they choose what they want. Because there are some students that would just greatly benefit from our office and our program, but just are not engaged enough, maybe too much interference from the background, and they never really get in. And then I go like, man, I wish. And I'm saying, hey, we have a meeting, or hey, we're doing this thing for the career thing, or hey, we're doing this. And ultimately they have to choose. So the nice part now, you know, someone walks in, Amy, and they say, what are you going to do for my son or daughter? Like I said, we have a full book of what could happen.
Yeah.
Usually that allows a mother or father to dial back and to feel safe and to feel confident about their son or daughter choosing Villanova. And then we just wait for like the blips in the radar if something happens, like, you know, failed a test or got sick or medical leave or, you know, things like that. So there's really no like advice. Like I couldn't be like, oh, you know, when a parent comes in, you should talk to them like this. Because as we said before, like no day in my office has been the same. And no matter what, you know, mother hen or pit bull parent you talk about, or someone that deems themselves to be a pit bull, there's someone out pitting them right next
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
There is. So when someone comes in, I can't say like, oh, I've had this parent before, this is what we're gonna do. I just try to keep my feet in the ground and wait to see what's coming, and then, you know, just take it for what it is. But also too, we need to be very clear. I've said it several times. This is a special place. So, you know, there's some great students here, and usually great students come from great families. Usually, not always, but usually. And when someone steps into our office, if they've been fighting for 18 years, or they've had a great time advocating for their son or daughter for that time, most likely it's going to be a great transition to our office. But there are people that come in and you can tell that they're tired. They've done a lot of fighting. They've done a lot of meetings. They're tired, and they don't want you to be the next one, right? Yeah. So you have to be ready for that too. And one thing I can say is you always have to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. When I see a family that comes in, if they're tired, I have to understand that they're tired, and I can't give them the full, you know, hype that we can bring. I gotta let them be tired and explain hopefully why they won't have to be tired. And when someone comes in and they're fired up and ready to go, they're getting a full dose of me, and they're going to hear exactly what this office can do. And if there's someone that's on the fence because they're newly diagnosed and they don't want people to know, then I have to meet them right there and talk about how I'm not going to go stand on the top of the bookstore and yell that you got this new diagnosis. But you need to start knowing that now is the time to talk to your faculty and staff, and now is the time to talk to these people about what you might need, so that when you go into the work world, it's not the first time when you're trying to get a job and you have to go talk to HR about something you need. So I always try to meet our students where they are and just see where the road takes us.
That's so awesome. Okay, so this question doesn't have anything to do with Villanova, nothing to do with Level. This is Greg. What is... it could be a product, it could be an app, it could be a TV show. What's something recently that you've discovered that's a game changer? Like mine are these, my shoes, my plastic Birks.
Those are Birks.
I love them. They're a game changer for me because I don't think I've taken them off since I got them in the mail.
They're perks, actually. They're plastic
They're
perks.
plastic, yes, they're
They're
perks,
perks.
Waterproof.
for sure. So what's something like that you've recently discovered that you love?
That's a great question. I mean, realistically, what's all the game changers for me now are things for my kids, because I like, even though I have a 7-year-old who's my oldest, I'm still a new dad with a second grader, you know.
Wow.
Everything's a game changer. And then I have a kindergartner, and everything's, you know what I mean? Like, and then I have a 3-year-old who like jumps off the high dives at our pool club, and he's the only 3-year-old. Like they said, like in the pool's history, that swims across the pool, like no float whatsoever. Right? So like a game changer is all 3 of my kids swimming, so I could sit in a lounge chair with my wife and have a drink.
That is a game changer
That
right
is.
there. No, hey, no swim diaper, no adjusting goggles.
Hey,
Done.
the next game changer that you don't know about is when all 3 of your kids are tall enough to touch the bottom of the pool. And then it's like you can go to sleep. At that point, you can go to sleep. Then you don't
I
have to
thought
worry.
you were
Once they
gonna
can
say-
touch everywhere.
I thought you were going to say tall enough to reach the microwave to make their own.
Yeah, that's a plus too.
There's a game changer, and you guys, I mean, are you kidding me? Realistically, there should be a game changer, you know, almost weekly in
Yeah.
certain aspects of your life, right? Like,
Yeah.
I need something because I don't want to live the same life every week. So now the more I can do, like even this just reinvigorates me to try to go do more work, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
so for me, something as small as, hey, Greg has a car that actually is in this century, like that makes my life a little easier.
Greg, are you saying I need a new color of Birks each week?
Yeah, it's possible.
Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
I think that's what you just said.
I would say that I would consult with John, but there's no way I'm saying that with you on the line. So
He buys way more shoes than I do, so don't, he knows that. It was so much fun, Greg. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
you've been awesome.
enjoyed it.
Wasn't I amazing? I think that was my best one yet.
Whatever is the easiest way for you to find us, podcast or YouTube, just subscribe.
Just come knock on the door. You can
Come
do
on.
that too.
Have dinner with us. You can take Mabry with you.
If you're nice, go ahead and leave us a review also.
Leave us a review. You never know. You might just get it in front of somebody that really needed to hear the message.
But if you're going to be mean, just private message us.
Actually, don't message us at all.
Go on. Go on. Get out of here. We don't need you.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Totally Worth It podcast. We appreciate you.